Hello, and welcome back to Lady Jane Books. Today, we have a very exciting live show. Carrie from Very Literary Carrie is back once again. Hi, Carrie.
Hi, I don't know why you keep signing up for this. You keep having me back on here. You poor thing. I keep picking these books.
It's what the people want, and we must answer to the people, Carrie.
Yes.
So, for all of those who didn't go into our last live stream, Carrie and I read My Heart is a Chainsaw, and that was an interesting stream. I gotta say, you gotta go check that one out. But at the very end, we decided that we were gonna give the author another shot, and so we read The Only Good Indians by Stephen Graham Jones. So, this is honestly, for me, a little bit of a redemption attempt here. I will spoil the last stream for you and say I did not care for My Heart is a Chainsaw. And if you want my true unfiltered thoughts about it, go check out that stream. But Carrie convinced me to give it another shot. And so, Carrie, what did you think? What were your first impressions here?
I definitely liked it better than My Heart is a Chainsaw. I think because My Heart is a Chainsaw had so many nostalgic factors for me with the slashers, I was really trying so hard to like it. But there wasn't a whole lot for me to work with there. And I think you can kind of tell that in the stream as well. But this one, it there were parts where I was like, this is weird. I don't know where this is going. And then something would hit me all of a sudden and shock me or make me think. And I'd be like, I think I like this one.
Awesome. Awesome. I'll be honest, I did not like My Heart is a Chainsaw very much. So I had literally zero expectations, like
Yeah.
none. And so I was actually a little bit wary of this one, even though several people have said like, "Oh, it's better than My Heart is a Chainsaw." I wasn't really taking that bait, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So I will say that it definitely was an improvement in my
Okay.
mind from My Heart is a Chainsaw. However, that for me, and this is my opinion only, it still wasn't standout. It was just that, okay, we're better than, in my opinion, something that really wasn't that great, but that just means it was kind of average for me. So
Yeah.
I did not care for this one as much as I hoped. In my like fantasy Lady Jane mind, I was thinking like, oh my gosh, this is gonna be so polarizing. Like I really, really didn't like My Heart is a Chainsaw. Wouldn't it be great if I read this one and absolutely loved it? And then it was my favorite like book of 2025, and like I'd rant and rave and this whole like total switch up, but it didn't happen for me. So, unfortunately, didn't care for this one. But let's go into some of the more like pointed points about what this book is about and why you liked it more and why I personally didn't. So we start off with this kind of general idea of this four friend group on a Indian reservation, a Native American reservation. And you kind of already get that this is a bit of a creepy book because one of the friends, without any context, kind of just like gets wiped out right in the first chapter. Like he's just gone. So we kind of already get this idea that this is going to be a bit like a slasher type of thing, like we've already previously read. But Carrie, what was your first initial thoughts when you first started the book there?
Um, I honestly don't refresh my memory. How does it start? Does it start with the hunt?
No, it actually starts, or it might start with the hunt, but it starts with Ricky and he's out on the town and he leaves the bar rather inebriated, and then something
Right.
he thinks is an elk attacks him, and then there's no more Ricky.
Yes. Okay. That You know what's kind of weird about that? It kind of reminded me of My Heart is a Chainsaw and how the opening of that book was with the was it Swedish couple
Yep.
who goes missing, and so their little story was very terrifying. It was very similar to that. So
That's what I
that
was getting to.
started off strong, very mysterious, very much a hook. But this book, I had a higher expectation for it, if nothing else, because of the title.
Okay, how come?
Because Stephen Graham Jones as a Native American, I was kind of expecting maybe a little bit more subtext related
Mhm.
to that in the last book, and because he kind of alluded to some things, but it really didn't go anywhere, in my opinion, in My
Right.
Heart as a Chainsaw. And with this book having such a controversial title, I mean, that The Only Good Indians, that comes from a racist.
Yeah, I actually didn't know that one until I read, like, towards the end of the book, and I was like,
Yeah.
"Oh, like, that's, ugh, rough."
Yeah. So
So
when I
I actually did not know that saying before I read this.
yeah. So when I saw that, I was like, "Oh, this could get really intense." So I kind of expected a bit more from this book. And I think it did some of that. It did add more, I think, subtext than My Heart is a Chainsaw.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that I did like about this book is that it had so many like subtext and it centered a lot about like Native American beliefs and traditions and the different factions of it and some of the history and some of the like lore and legends. And I really enjoyed that. I love stories that based around that.
Yeah.
So in my mind, that did make it better than My Heart is a Chainsaw because I love stories like that. And I
Yeah.
really like that he kind of based the horror around something like that, like this idea
Yeah.
of, um, kind of a spirit taking its revenge, and about being disrespectful to nature. And I just thought that was really, really interesting. I will say that I really appreciated that part of the story.
Yeah. Same.
Yeah. So then we go kind of into like this book is a little bit chopped up into like three pieces, and it's kind of like three acts. And so we go into Lewis's story. And Lewis, so just to give some background, this whole thing is the result of these four friends going hunting and kind of it going really, really wrong and making a mistake 10 years ago. And so now the spirit of uh, the victim of that comes for revenge and slowly kind of creates the demise of each of these characters. So in that way, as I said, it's very much a slasher type of book. Um, but then we spend a lot of time with Lewis, and I think we spend more time with Lewis more than the other people in the group because obviously Ricky's gone, like within the first chapter. Then
Yeah.
Lewis, I felt like almost had half of this book. So,
Yes.
what did you think of kind of Lewis's, like, setup and his story? And
I
because I have
loved
some thoughts on that. Yeah.
I well, it all kind of centers around Lewis. And he's kind of half in, half out of this world because they make a lot of comments about his wife being just, was she blonde?
Yeah, she's a blonde.
Blonde white woman. And so it seemed to me that he's not as immersed with the Native American culture now, and his friends kind of see him as a little bit removed
Yeah, I
because
think he was, like, physically removed too, like,
yeah.
space-wise. I mean, I don't think he
Well, and
lived
they
with
talked
them.
about him not being on the reservation, and before something happens to Lewis, we see him trying to make his way back to the reservation.
Mm.
Um, and so, yeah, I think some things there are kind of coming full circle, especially with his daughter. He has a daughter in the book as
Mm,
well, and, yeah, I think he was the natural person to center the story around. And there were a lot of characters in the book, and I liked the fact that, we kind of get to know Lewis's friends, and so we it was easy to kind of imagine, like, this camaraderie, between these guys, but it was a little difficult to keep track of who was
yeah,
who.
yeah,
And so there are a lot of names and things that I couldn't keep up with.
yeah. I definitely agree with that too. Um, but I actually really like the setup of the story because n- you kind of have to wonder before things like really hash out. Um, is Lewis like losing his mind? You know what I mean? Is this all of his in his mind? You know what I mean? With the things
Well,
that
you
he
know what I thought?
what
I thought, this is random and out of left field, but
I
I
love this.
just thought, is this guy setting himself up to have an affair? Is he just obsessed and wants to have an affair with this coworker
Yeah,
named Cheney? Cheney?
yeah.
Shane?
Shaney, yep.
And yeah, that's kind of what I thought. And I was like,
Great.
"This son of a is plotting. He's plotting to have an affair. Like, this is all what this is." And then something really dramatic and out of nowhere happens, and that theory went completely out of the window. Even though there was a little bit of, like, sexual tension
Tension.
or
Yeah.
something there. Um, yeah, and I don't know. I don't know if he even realized that that's what it seemed like was happening when he was writing that, or if he did that on purpose to kind of like me, like lull me into this sense of, oh well, I know where this is going, and then, bam, shot.
Yeah, I didn't see that he was setting up for it, but like consciously, but I did see like, guys, this is gonna end up like this type of way. You know what I mean? So I don't think he was like in my mind, the character wasn't meaning to set it up to do that, but it was more like it could happen. You know what I mean? And it's kind of like, oh, it just happened. You know what I mean? Like hands off, just lend her some books, so that's all I did. Um,
Gotta
you know what I
watch,
mean? Yeah, exactly.
gotta watch
So
Book Linden, guys.
gotta watch the books. Um, that's why I don't lend any books out of my library. Okay, I keep everything above board. Anyway, anyway, um, so yeah, I did kind of see that, like, he was kind of intrigued by her, and it's interesting that she was, I think, Native American as well, where his wife was not. So it's
Yeah,
kind of like Wood was saying that he's kind of like having a little bit of a call back to like culture in a really strange way that it was
yeah.
presented. Um, but I kind of thought it was either going to be more like a haunted house type of thing with like the
Mm,
seeing the elk, through the fans, and then seeing like the woman with the elk head. And I thought he was like going to go crazy, to be honest. Like
yeah.
I thought this was he's insane type of thing. And then, um, obviously, spoiler alert, this is going to have spoilers. He then murders Shaney and then murders his wife. And so I thought it was going to be kind of either something set him up so he was like insane and he's like, no, 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 she was this devil thing. She was like this, demon. And then the cops would be like, "Mm," you know what I mean? So I thought it was going to be a setup like that with the consequences. But then it gets very strange with the calf there, the presentation of the calf. So, do you
Yeah.
think that Shaney was the demon, as he was so convinced?
No,
Okay, why not?
because the demons seem to move around, right?
Yeah, a little bit.
A little bit? Now that I'm thinking about this book, it's just wilder and wilder because I'm thinking, why was the elk calf in his wife's uterus,
Yeah.
not in Cheney's, right?
Yeah, it was weird. It was a weird
It
turn.
there's a lot there that we could probably unpack that, yeah, I never quite figured out how that worked out.
Well, and that's where I was like, is he just insane? Like, is this like a break, a break in his sanity? Because like just the idea of like a woman having a calf inside of her is, that seems like it's something that's a break in reality. Okay. Like, so, but then to know that, like, oh no, the police found him running around with it, I was like, whoa, wait a second. So I
Yeah.
didn't know what quite to make with that. And to be honest, I kind of wish it was my way a little bit because I find those type of stories really interesting versus like, no, this thing had a power and put a calf inside of his wife that he took out and ran away with and then he got shot. It just, it just yeah, that was a little messy in my mind.
Yeah, and it's like, how did he know to cut his wife's stomach open? Like, why
Yeah.
was that his first in or one of his first instincts? Does that mean that the spirit of the angry elk, had, like, infiltrated his body and his mind?
Yeah.
What does that look like?
Yeah.
And then, you know, the elk spirit is in the body of this teenage girl,
Yeah, and then
right?
it like jumps and yeah, it's
And I kinda wanna know who was that girl?
yeah. I almost thought she was more like a doppelganger. Like he was supposed to be a doppelganger for the daughter of the other of his friend. And that's
Oh,
what I thought,
yeah,
like,
yeah.
she's just taking on, like, things so she wouldn't, like, raise suspicion. That's was my opinion, but you're right, it was just kinda, like, random that suddenly she was, like, this teenage girl, and then suddenly she was the Shaney too, and it just yeah, that's something that, like, bothered me as well, but so then we jump over to
Well,
his
oh, I
go
just
ahead.
thought about something. It kind of is helping me unpack this here.
I love this.
You know, his friend's daughter, who is Native American, this Native American basketball star, she's gonna kinda continue her life and do great things. And here was Lewis with a wife who's not Native American, and he's kind of missing that chance. Like the elk is kind of symbolic maybe of the continuation of his culture.
Oh.
And
Oh.
so there it was, and he was maybe trying to get back to it. He was running with this baby elk back to the reservation, and he doesn't make it, right? Because he gets
Yeah.
shot by the police. Um, and so yeah, that's a lot. That's kinda heavy. I don't know what to do with that.
And there's also it's funny you mentioned that too, because something that just popped up in my mind is that they do say, I think several times, that they've chosen not to have children, that
Yeah,
they're child-free couple, and so and they also say that out of all these 4, there was only 1 who had a child, and that was that basketball star.
yeah,
So, I think that's really interesting too, that it's like, he's carrying a calf, and he's carrying, like, this new life back like to the reservation. So I think symbolically that's probably more significant than I gave it credit for at first.
yeah,
Especially considering that he was in a couple that didn't want kids at that point. You know what I mean?
yeah.
So I thought that was interesting. Yeah.
And look, and here's the thing, when you talk about conservation of nature, we've seen species historically that were hunted by Native Americans go extinct or practically extinct,
Mm.
right? By, um, westward expansion and just, overhunting by white settlers and things like that. So now we're seeing with Lewis's situation, it's kind of mimicking an extinction of his culture, right? And
Yeah. And
The
his friend
idea
group and his
his
culture and
friend
yeah,
group, they're not they're not reproducing, so they're not bringing up, the next generation of people in the tribe. Um, and yeah, that's kinda deep. That's kinda sad.
yeah, it is, it's very sad, yeah. And I think those points lend itself very well to a story like this, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So then we go into kind of the second act here, where we follow the second two friends, Gabriel and Cass. And so they're the ones that I think stayed friends throughout all this, right? While Lewis was away, right?
Okay.
Yep, yep. And so their story kind of all goes down in um, a ceremony, like a sweat lodge type of thing, with the purification, and they're helping this young man, Nate, I believe his name is, to kind of get on like the right path of life and to kind of like purify him and help him like find his way through this ceremony. And then all tragedy hits. So, what did you think of their relationship, and especially after the whole Lewis tragedy that we just went through? What did you think of kind of the switch into their story?
I think that was the part I had the most trouble keeping up with people and their connection with each other. I think maybe because I'd been with Lewis for so long,
Mm,
I kinda had that, I knew all the players, and this, I wasn't quite as connected.
yeah,
I
yeah,
mean, and I don't know why. I don't know if it's because it was the switch from Lewis to them, and, I'd spent so much time with Lewis. I don't know if it was just because of the dialogue, there were just too many voices, so it was really kind of hard to get a distinct voice out of that. But I did like the idea that they were all coming together for this ceremony, and like they want to acknowledge their friend Lewis, but they also have questions, you know, because their friend has done truly horrific things. And
yeah.
let me just
And they're in
say,
the aftermath of that. They're like, how could this happen? Yeah.
the scene where he rips Cheney's scalp off of her head with his motorcycle, and that just that took me aback.
Really?
It did, because I don't know, I didn't really, expect it. I didn't really see so much. There was a lot of buildup as far as, like, his mental state,
Yeah.
but he'd never,
That was
ever
pretty quick for,
yeah, he
turnaround.
never
Yeah.
displayed any sort of violence other than the hunting, but never to people, and so, yeah, that was abrupt in my
Yeah.
mind.
I totally, totally agree. Um, I think honestly for me, Ricky's was so quick. Like it was a chapter. You know what I mean? Ricky's like
Yeah,
demise was a chapter. Then we spend almost half the book with Lewis. And in my mind, the story could have even just ended there. You know what I mean? Just Lewis's
true,
story about
yeah,
something that he did bad on this hunt that he's paying for years later, and then like the violence and gore and like the end. I think that's a whole story in and of itself, to be
true,
honest. And I,
yeah,
I really, I really liked it, and I would have been so satisfied if it just ended there, to be honest. Um, so then the switch to these guys, I'm like, oh, okay, well, I want obviously the spirit is just like picking off these guys. That's what we're here for now.
yeah,
Um, so I wasn't as like excited about the continuation of the story a bit because I already got the satisfaction from like Lewis's demise here. You know what I mean? Like the story could have ended there. So I did like kind of the exploration of like what was happening on in like the sweat tent, and kind of this idea of like mourning people and having revelations through like this extreme heat, and kind of seeing that process I thought was really interesting. But then obviously when tragedy happens, it kind of like lessened it for me. So obviously we start with like the dogs have disappeared, then we go with like the police officer is gone, then we go with, these other like surprises. Um, what did you think of kind of that turn, Carrie?
Um, it was a lot. It was a lot going on
Very quick too, like right?
very quickly. Like, I kind of enjoyed how it ended, though, because of the daughter,
Mhm.
comes out okay, and I felt like that was a good place for it to end because here we have the next generation who is not going to suffer any more consequences from previous generations,
Right.
And I think that speaks to a lot of things, right? Just trying to make sure that the next generation, doesn't make the same mistakes as previous generations and kind of is free to carry on um, their culture and all of that. So, yeah, I kind of liked that the daughter gets to carry on. Um, but I don't know if we needed all of that.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, I think in my mind it would have been, first of all, I think first and foremost, it would have been strongest if they just like stopped with Lewis's story. But then if it would just stopped with these other men's demise and then like leave the daughter alone a bit. I get why, because obviously this is a revenge arc and what happened to the Elks calf should be done. But at that point, like I just felt like it was a little bit of overkill, like to go after
Yeah,
the daughter. I mean, I understand why, but you already got like everybody who actually did it. You know what I
right.
mean? It's like like okay, two beings passed away from the hunt. Four beings have passed away from who's done it. Like the continuation of going after the daughter was just a little, really? Are we continuing this out? You know what I mean? And it also kind of bothered me a little bit because the elk obviously was like a mother figure. You know what I mean? And so in my mind, it kind of goes against this nature narrative that, you know, um, she would be protective. In my mind, she would be almost protective of a young person or another calf, so to speak, rather
Right.
than I've lost mine, so you have to lose yours. But after I already arranged your device, you know what I mean? It felt like there was no purpose.
Yeah.
You know what I mean to that? So I think it would have been way better if, either I do like the ending about how she stood up and the cycle didn't continue. I love that generational trauma healing. I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
But just the fact of her going after the daughter at that point, I was a little like, okay, you're stretching the story here.
Yeah.
This is the sequel that we didn't really need. So
Well, I didn't really feel like at that point it made me not feel anything for the elk spirit, whereas
yeah,
before, you could kind of like sympathize, like, oh my gosh, like this pregnant elk, had her life taken and her baby's life just ripped out of her and just wasted for nothing.
yeah,
Um, I could feel sympathy for that up to a certain point.
yeah.
It's just like, okay, this doesn't no.
Yeah, like
This
you're pushing the envelope here, you know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like,
yeah.
yeah,
Y
I
you
think
can
that
have revenge, but not that much revenge.
yeah, yeah, and again, I think it being like this gentle, like mother-like type of spirit that's
Yeah,
protecting her child and getting retribution for her child, which I would totally be for in the story. But the
yeah,
fact that then she went after someone else's, to me, it doesn't jive. You know what I mean? It definitely doesn't jive, especially with the spirit of nature and things like that. That just doesn't. Maybe I'm wrong, but for this story, it doesn't fit. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So. Yeah, so is there anything else you want to discuss with this story, Carrie?
I mean, I'm glad we read it because, like I said, it was a vast improvement, for me
Yeah,
from
me too.
Hard as a Chainsaw. and I think I kind of got a little bit what I wanted maybe from My Heart is a Chainsaw and didn't get. So I feel good about that. And I can see this book was good for me. I can see why people like this author. Um I'm not going to say, he's like top 5 favorites or anything like that. It's nothing, it's not like a 5-star book for me, but I did enjoy it. I, of course, enjoy getting together with you, Jane, so any excuse for that. Um, but yeah, yeah, I enjoyed it.
I am relieved that because I think in our last stream I said I am so nervous that this is his writing style,
Yeah,
and I'm relieved to know that no, now I know no, he was doing it for the story specifically, and I do really commend that kind of uh, first middle section with Lewis's story. Like that creeped me out. I was engaged. I wanted to see what was going on. I loved like the lore and like the kind of ghostliness of it and the creepiness. And then the violence, obviously the violent turn was a really, really interesting horror twist. So I will say, considering that part of the story, the author's gone way up in my mind, way up, considering from where we ended off with My Heart is a Chainsaw. And that's a major relief to me that his writing style is different than what we just happened to first
yeah,
stumble upon. So I will say, reading that, I- I'm happy that we read it in that regard because now I'm like, okay, like I can appreciate some of his storytelling. Um, but overall, I have to say, for me, it was okay. It wasn't stellar. I was really hoping in my mind that it would be like a 10 out of 5-star book for me, and that oh my gosh, this is so great, especially considering our previous experience. That didn't quite happen for me. I think it's an improvement, but it wasn't a wow factor for me. It
how
wasn't
many
like a
stars would you give it?
I would give it 3 stars. I'm gonna go to like a good mid-ground 3-star for it, and part of that is the fact that it's so different from My Heart is a Chainsaw,
Yeah,
and that the writing style, in my opinion, has been improved from it. Um, so I that does kind of factor into my star rating as well. So I do like the Lewis story. I think if he just took that and made it like a short story or novella or did something with that, it would have been maybe 4 or 5 stars. Um, but unfortunately, the stuff around it kind of took away from that a little bit.
yeah.
Yeah, but I didn't hate it, so that's good. That's a big improvement. We're very excited about this.
3 stars.
3 stars. That's good. 3 stars. So, what would you rate it, Gary?
I'd give it 3.5,
All right. Okay, I can
which
respect
is
that.
improvement. I think My Heart is a Chainsaw. I think I gave it a very, very generous 2.75.
Yeah, I think I gave it like a 2
Yeah,
or
I think you
1
gave it
even.
like a 1 or a 2.
I think so. Yeah, it was real bad. So this has been a big improvement. So I'm very excited about this. That
Yes.
never happens on Lady J books.
Now,
Um,
the next book we read, I have to pick, or you have to pick a 5-star read. We have
yes.
to.
Yes,
We've
I have some thoughts about it. It's not going to be Stephen Graham Jones. I'm so sorry to disappoint you, but it's not. I think we're done. I think we're done with
Okay,
Stephen Graham Jones. We can leave as
I think we
friends.
are.
You're good,
We're
good,
we're
good.
good. We're good. We checked it off.
Check the box. Check the
Done.
box. Yeah, but I do have some exciting recommendations that I'll have to run by you.
Ooh.
So stay tuned at Lady Jane Books to see what else Carrie and I are going to read this year. And with that, Carrie, if people wanted more of your content, where can they find you?
My channel is Very Literary Carrie. I have not been very active recently, but who knows? Maybe I'll pop back in. Maybe me and Lady Jane will do something on my channel. Who knows? There's plenty of Lady Jane content on my channel as well. Lady Jane and I have done so many tag teams over the years. She's my ultimate tag team buddy reader. So
Absolutely. And you're one of my favorite guests too, Carrie.
thank you, Jane.
And with that, I think we're going to wrap up the stream. Thank you so much for watching, and we will see you next time.
Bye, guys.